Hi, my name is Stephen Kirsting, and in this video I want to discuss several topics that come up frequently in regards to printing your photos. And those are pixels per inch or PPI versus dots per inch or DPI and color space. Let's start with pixels per inch. An image has a fixed number of pixels, and that is the size. If we look at the pixels required for a print, there is an accepted circle of confusion limit, or COC. And the COC defines the maximum size of a point of light on the sensor for acceptable sharpness. It also directly correlates to the maximum size of a pixel on the sensor used to record that point of light. For a full-frame sensor, the circle of confusion limit standard is 0.03 millimeters, or 30 microns. Now, most digital cameras these days have sensors with pixels in the 8 to 4 micron size. For a full-frame sensor that is 36 by 24 millimeters in size, that means 36 divided by 0.03 millimeters is 1200 pixels wide, and 24 millimeters divided by the 0.03 millimeter circle of confusion limit equals 800 pixels wide. Multiply 800 times 1200 and you get 960,000 pixels. That is less than 1 megapixel. But because it takes 2 pixels to define a point of light, let's go ahead and double that to 1,920,000 pixels. That is still less than 2 megapixels on a full-frame sensor required. Even if we say the circle of confusion standard is outdated and inadequate, and that is a valid argument, and we increase that resolution requirement to equal the maximum the human eye is capable of, it would still be no more than 14 megapixels required for a full-frame sensor. And that is for any size print you might care to make. Now, this does assume that the image is displayed so that it occupies approximately a 45-degree diagonal field of view so you can see the entire image. So let's look at PPI versus image size. Let's go to image size, and make sure resample is unchecked. And we note that width, height in pixels, inches, or whatever, and resolution are fixed. They are locked together. If I change one, let's say I'm going to print this at 10 inches wide. The other two change automatically. So at 10 inches, this image would print at 458 pixels per inch. Now this image that I have up right now is approximately 15 megapixels. That is more than is required for any size print. Let's take this and say I'm going to print it at the 300 DPI of a printer. I can print it at 15.2 inches wide. Let's say I want to print this at 5 foot wide, 60 inches. It is 76 pixels per inch. And it doesn't matter, because at any distance I can view 60-inch wide print, it will be acceptably sharp, because it has more pixels, approximately 15, than is required, a maximum of 14. Now let's say the circle of confusion standard is inadequate. The image is going to be a large fine art print where you're going to stand with your nose against it. In that case, we may need more pixels. All right. And we want to get the maximum image quality out of the printer that it is capable of. It does not matter how many pixels I send to the printer, it is going to print it at the DPI setting that printer is capable of. Now for some printers that's as low as 200 DPI, 240 DPI is common, and the most highest I'm aware of at the moment is 360 DPI actual undithered dots per inch. Okay, so the highest I could possibly need is 360. So if I put 360 in here, that says the limit I can generate a print at the maximum printer quality it is capable of is 12.7 inches wide. Now it does not matter if I send it 300 pixels per inch, it's still going to print at 360 DPI if that's what that printer can do. If I send it 200, it's still going to print at 360 DPI. It'll be 22 inches wide. Now with digital images, JPEGs in particular, you get the square artifacting. Pixels are squarish, and that can show up in a very large print. So sometimes it may be beneficial to resample the image. So we check this box. And what resampling is it adds and takes away pixels. Every time with this unchecked, if I change resolution to 300 pixels per inch, the pixel size of the image does not change. I say OK, and this image is still at 33%. Same view. It has not changed size. If I do this and I tell it 1 pixel per inch and I say OK, it is still at 33% and it is still taking up the same amount of screen space. And that is because the image size in pixels has not changed. If I want to change the image size in pixels, I must select resample. And under resample, I have a few options. These automatic. We have bicubic smooth gradients, which is generally best for enlarging. We have bicubic sharper, which is best for reduction. There's bicubic smooth, and then just bicubic smooth gradients. I don't even know what that one is. And a few options. So if I want to get the best results from Photoshop, I need to pick the correct method here, or leave it on automatic and hope Photoshop does its best. I want this to be at 300 pixels per inch. It has now changed the pixel size of the image, but not the print size. So where did all these pixels come from? Photoshop made them up. And it probably did not do a good job of it. All right. And if I say I want this to be at 1 pixel per inch, where did all those pixels go? Photoshop got rid of them. It compressed them, combined them, and threw them away. The results from resampling an image are going to be probably no better than the results the printer software will do when it resizes the image to generate the print dimensions you want. So there's generally not a big benefit to resampling an image yourself, certainly in Photoshop. There are dedicated programs such as QImage or Perfect Resize and some of the others that might do a little better job than Photoshop does, or a lot better job than Photoshop does. It may do a better or worse job than the printer-specific software does, and the only way to find out is trial and error. In general, minor upsampling can be of minor benefit, but remember, as long as you've got at least a 14 megapixel image, you have enough for any size print for any normal, semi-normal, critical viewing environment, other than standing with your nose against a print where you can't see it. So it's not necessary. So where's the 300 PPI requirement come from? As I said, that is to match the DPI of the printer's maximum capability if it's a 300 DPI printer. There's no benefit of sending 300 DPI or PPI to a 200 DPI printer. Change that. There might be a minor benefit to sending more than the printer is actually capable of. That's very technical stuff. Okay, so in general, leave the image alone. If you've got at least 14 megapixels in your image, leave it alone, print it at whatever size you want, and send the resolution at whatever resolution, pixels per inch, that results in. The less digital manipulation, making up of pixels, or throwing away of pixels, the better image quality you're going to get 99.5% of the time. So that's PPI versus DPI. Now let's talk about color space. Here we have 3 color spaces. The colored area is the visible spectrum the human eye can actually see. And we have the ProPhoto color space, and I believe this image is in ProPhoto. It is in ProPhoto. So this image is in its largest color space, which actually includes some areas, some colors that I can't see, you can't see. There's the Adobe RGB, and then there's the sRGB color space. The smaller color spaces fit within the larger color spaces, but the colors in them that they contain are the same. So these colors within the sRGB color space are the same colors that are in that area inside the Adobe RGB and inside the ProPhoto RGB. Now I'm using a MacBook Pro with a Retina screen, and it is 98% of the sRGB color space, which means this photo image on my screen is in the ProPhoto color space, but what I can see is 98% of this color space. I cannot see all of the colors that may be in my photo. Now you might have a wide gamut monitor that does all of Adobe RGB, or most of it. It may have areas that kick out into the ProPhoto RGB color space, and you can see those colors. But if you're working in ProPhoto, I'm not aware of a single monitor that can display all of ProPhoto, and in fact the human eye can't see all of ProPhoto. So, color space. If I deliver an sRGB image, I should expect it to look like what I can see on my monitor because I'm viewing the image in sRGB. If I send an Adobe RGB image, I may get better or worse results than what I can see because I can't see what's going on out here. The only way to find out is trial and error. And if I send a ProPhoto, same thing. Maybe slightly better results, maybe slightly worse. I don't know because I can't see it on my screen. Let's look at printer color space. As I said, I'm working in sRGB, photos in ProPhoto. I'm looking at it in sRGB. Over here, we have some paper printer profiles or color space capabilities compared to the two color spaces. The black line is the Adobe color space, and the white line is the sRGB color space. Now this is a Fuji Frontier, an older 370 printer, which is an RGB laser head optical printer for generating metal halide photographic prints. As you can see, the printer and paper capability is smaller than what I can see, what my monitor is displaying to me. What matters is that what I send fits in what the printer can deliver. If not, it will be kicked out. The color space doesn't actually matter as such. If it was sent directly to a printer without any color management whatsoever, all the color spaces would print the same, as limited by the color space capability of the paper and printer I'm asking for them to deliver. So in this case, there are many colors I can see on my screen and many more colors that may be in this photo that will not fit on this paper from this printer. And it doesn't matter if I'm in Adobe, because there's a little bit missing there, or sRGB, it's a little more missing here, but most of it fits within. How do I see the color space of the paper and printer? That's called soft proofing. We want to go up to View, Proof Setup, Custom, and select a printer paper profile that you get from your printer. You can either make it for yourself, for your own printer, using a color meter, like the Spider color meter or I1 or any of the various ones, to create your own profile for the paper and printer you own, or you get them from your print supplier. So I have Arctic Gloss paper, Polar Satin, Polar Matte, Pearl Metallic. Let's go with Pearl Metallic. I'm going to choose Relative Color Metric, Black Point Compensation, Simulate the Paper. When I say OK, this image may change. Actually, if I go back here and undo, actually View, let's close that. Let's go View, turn off Proof Colors. And you noticed it got dimmer. And that's due to the paper and black point compensation. The way that it will come back from the printer, it is not going to be a backlit image, like my screen is. It's going to be a reflected image, CMYK image, and this is what this soft proofing is simulating. And as important or more important is I look at gamut warning. In all these gray areas, the default gamut warnings in Photoshop is gray, and that is changeable. If you're working in black and white photos and stuff, gray might not be very useful. You might want to change it to orange or red or something like that, but the default's gray and I can see it on this image. And what it's telling me is these areas will not print within this color space. They're too saturated, too much luminance, whatever else, it will not print correctly on that paper from that printer. So I have some choices. I can choose a different printer with a different paper and which is capable of delivering a wider gamut. And maybe we can try a different paper. We'll go to Custom again. We'll pick a different paper and we'll go with a satin paper. Okay, that looks a little better. And orange shifted a little bit. Matte. Oh, that's back worse. It's got a little larger. So maybe I need to choose a different supplier that's using inkjet printers that are capable of a wider color space. Now, as I said, it doesn't matter what color space I send this photo in if it's not going to be color managed, because a color is a color is a color. This color is the same color in all of these color spaces. The only thing that matters is that it fits here. But color spaces are generally not unmanaged by this print supplier. If you're printing yourself, it's going to be managed by Photoshop with a printer or Lightroom, or however you have your color management workflow set up. Or if it's at your print supplier, it has to be in a color space they recognize, because if it's not, it will be rewritten. So if I send an Adobe RGB image with correct color space tag, they will recognize Adobe RGB and it will print here. And as long as what I sent in Adobe RGB fits in here, I will get a high quality print. If I send sRGB and it fits in here, I will get a high quality print. Now, if I send an untagged image, the assumption is usually that the image is in sRGB. So if I send a ProPhoto file untagged, it will be assumed to be sRGB, and the numbers will be rewritten for printing. And that will generate results that are bad. Generally, if you're getting back prints that are darker, duller, etc., etc., it's because you sent a wide color space, ProPhoto or Adobe, and they printed it and managed it as if it was sRGB. So, what color space to use? For me, the answer is sRGB for prints. And that's because I can see sRGB. And I want my prints to come back the way I see them. So all I have to do is get rid of these gamut warnings for this image. Probably saturation. Usually vibrance and saturation. Reduce this. Reduce the vibrance. And we can get everything to fit within that paper color space. I may not want to do that exactly this way, but this is an example. Now if I print this, I have no gamut warnings, and I'm looking at the colors as they will be printed on that paper. And this is what I could expect to get back. So, PPI versus DPI. Don't worry about it, don't care. Unless you're going into very advanced printing where the print driver software is being bypassed, and you have, in that case, you have additional concerns such as the pixel per inch input limit capability of the printer. If you exceed that, the printer will resize your image. But from 99% of us, don't worry about PPI versus DPI. Send the largest file you can. Let the software at the printer resample the image as best it can for its printer, and the results will be probably as good or better than you can generate with basic resampling in Photoshop. If your image is being terribly oversized, where it would be printed pixelated, you can resample in order to get rid of the square edges of the pixels, but the image quality is not going to be significantly greater. And color space, send sRGB unless you're going to be experimenting to see what you can get, highest quality, unless you can see more than sRGB, and unless you're going to be bypassing color management at the print shop, printer itself. All right. So, image resolution as it is, ignore the pixel per inch, resample only if absolutely necessary, and send sRGB. That is going to suit 99% of us. Why do I edit in ProPhoto? I edit in ProPhoto because I don't want to lose any color capability of my camera. My camera does not record ProPhoto, but it records within ProPhoto, and I want to retain that. Someday, maybe, I will get a monitor that I can see wider than sRGB, and maybe there will be a printer that can print significantly larger than Adobe RGB. Right now, inkjet printers can print slightly larger than Adobe RGB in some areas. Most optical printers can only print within primarily the sRGB color range. But someday that might change. And someday I might be able to get better images from my photos, better prints from my photos than I can get today. So I keep the ProPhoto but output sRGB, and you should probably do the same. Because a color is a color, I can convert this image to any other profile, standard profile, and I should not see a shift until I convert the image to a profile that eliminates some colors that exist in the image. Since this image starts out as sRGB, it's a low resolution JPEGs, I can pretty much convert this to any profile I want, and I should not see a shift in color. So there's ProPhoto, no difference. Here's Adobe RGB, no difference. And I can say OK. Now I'm using absolute. If I use something like perceptual and turn on dithering and black point, I might see a difference. But if I use absolute colorimetric, I should see no difference, and I don't. Say OK. So no shift in colors, and we are now in the Adobe, I think I said Adobe, right? Adobe RGB. Yes, we're in Adobe. Now, if I see a difference, the chances are the issue is the screen and not the file. For example, if I put a gradient across here, there is a slight amount of banding in this image as I see it on my sRGB screen. And that is due to the limitations of my monitor. That banding is probably not actually in the image. It's a limitation of my screen. So if you see differences, chances are it's due to your screen limitations, and it may or may not exist in the actual image. The only way to know is to actually print it, unless it's going to stay on the web and then you do editing to get rid of it, because everybody's going to see this in sRGB. So we have this converted to Adobe. So say your workspace is Adobe or ProPhoto or whatever. Photoshop has a few oddities to it. In the export options, I can convert it to RGB, sRGB, which is what I want to do. But there's nowhere for me to embed a color tag. If I go and save as, I can embed the color profile, but I can't convert it. And the only profile I have available is the current color profile for the image, so Adobe RGB. I don't want that either. The only one that allows me to do both is the deprecated Save for Web. And here it says convert to RGB and embed color profile. That's what you want to do. All right. So your best bet is Save for Web from Photoshop. Save for Web, convert and embed, or convert it first to sRGB and then do a Save As where you can embed the color space. Lightroom does not have these issues. So if you're just coming back and forth and you export out of Lightroom, the Lightroom export will do JPEG, and when it does JPEG, it will embed the color space. So let's go ahead and we're going to export this image without the color tag. So export, export as. We're going to convert it to sRGB because that's what we would want to do. But like I said, I cannot embed the color tag. So we're going to call this color space 2, export it, and then we're going to open that image. And you will note it says this document does not have an embedded RGB profile. This is what happens when you send a Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB image out to a print shop that does not have a profile. And then it gets assigned a profile. They assume sRGB. Since this image was actually in sRGB, assigning it to sRGB is not going to cause much of a shift, if any. So I'm going to assign a color space that does not match the original image. Like I said, it was sRGB, saved it for ProPhoto. If I bring it back in as sRGB, I really wouldn't see much difference. So we're going to whack it a little bit as if it was an Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB being interpreted as sRGB. And this is what I get. If we look at the difference, I get desaturated, flatter colors, and some shifts. And that's what happens if you send an untagged image off to print. So if I send this image out, let's go ahead, I'm going to close it, and I'm going to open it again. Actually, let's do this. We saved it out as sRGB, untagged. I'm going to open it again, and this time I'm going to say it's sRGB. This is what happens if you send an untagged image out in sRGB, and they say and guess that it's sRGB, and I should see no difference. Okay, so your best choice, sRGB with a color tag embedded for web and for most print shops. If you have a wide gamut print at a print shop that can accept wider gamuts, you can use Adobe or ProPhoto matched to the print color space you're actually going to make with the color space tag embedded. To do that, you either have to convert it, save for web, or convert and export. Both cases, save as. In both cases, embed the color tag, because otherwise it'll get interpreted as sRGB and you'll have bad prints. Or use Lightroom, because it automatically embeds the color tag. Now let's look at exporting an image properly tagged. And I'll first convert this image back to Adobe RGB. Adobe RGB, say OK. Nothing's changed. And then we're going to go to File, Save As. And it says Embed Color Profile Adobe RGB. I'll say OK. Save it as CS. And this time, we'll go back and open the image, and we get no warning dialogues. The image is in the correct color space. It's in Adobe, and the software recognized it and properly applied the colors. So as long as the print shop you are sending your file to recognizes and utilizes the color space you sent, correctly tagged, you will get the output you expect as limited by the paper and printer. And again, you can see that the paper and printer really doesn't make use of all of the sRGB, all of Adobe RGB, and certainly not ProPhoto. And that's generally why they prefer sRGB. And also because most people do not properly color manage their files, and they're going to assume it's sRGB, and you will get mismatched colors. So sRGB is the safest, takes most of the color space of the print. As long as you use the correct profile, get tagged correctly and printed as well as can be. I hope that has cleared up and made some sense out of color space, soft proofing, pixels per inch, and DPI in regards to color management and printing your photos. Once again, my name is Stephen Kirsting, and I hope you found this information useful. Thank you.